All right, everybody, welcome to the Coaching Corner with Build Your Empire with special guest Khai McBride.
What's up, Mitch?
Glad you able to join us. I think you are the #1 Los Angeles sports team fan in the nation.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Rams, Lakers, Dodgers season seats. I just don't have time in my schedule for Kings. That would be way too much.
Yeah, I bet. Well, as you know, I'm a big diehard Dodger fan myself.
I don't know how that happened, but thank you.
Well, I can't jump on the Laker bandwagon, but as a kid, I was a big Darryl Strawberry fan.
Oh, got it.
And a Mets fan. And when he jumped ship to the Dodgers, that just became my team.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
My loyalties lied with the player more than the team, I guess, at that young age.
No, I can see that happening. If Kobe left, I would have followed Kobe. I still would have been a Lakers fan, but huge Kobe fan. He would have followed his career. I didn't care when Shaq left. Good riddance, but Kobe would have been a different story.
Yeah, I watch interviews before with Kobe talking about Shaq and how he could have been. Kobe always said he could have been the most dominant player of all time if he just would have had a work ethic like Kobe had. But I think he just was dominant enough, and he felt he didn't have to put in that extra work. But
it's too easy for some people in all walks of life. When it's too easy, you don't put the effort in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, hey, bringing you on here, I want to talk to you a little bit, fire some questions at you. So first one, before this whole quarantine thing and coronavirus, what was your favorite go-to meal at your favorite local restaurant?
You know what I miss? I miss going to sports bars.
Yeah.
I miss having hot wings and a beer at sports bars. And when they open up, that's the first place that I'm going because I know a lot of the sports are going to be fanless, but we'll just be watching at the sports bars. So I probably miss that the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is they're going to make these sports fanless, and then they're going to open up sports bars, and all the same fans are just going to pack in there shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
I was reading some of the baseball rules, and they were talking about how not all the players would be able to be on the bench or in the dugout. They would have to spread out 6 feet apart in the stands, which then they'd have to shower at home before and after the games. And it just makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, they should do that anyways. I mean, I do a little bit of MMA, and if you're not doing that, you're gonna get a staph infection. So why not?
Yeah, that's true. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what the favorite part of your job is.
So I'm a business coach in the mortgage industry. I brand myself as the entrepreneur's coach that focuses on the mortgage industry. And it's quite a distinction. In the mortgage industry, by the way, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. A lot of my competition I consider my friends, but in a lot of ways I don't really consider anybody my competition. I think that's what happens when you create a niche for yourself that only you fulfill, and then everybody else just becomes your friends. I would say all the owners of my competing coaching companies, I know them all. We talk, we banter, we're friends. I've been guests on their show. I plan on having a couple of them as guests on my show. I golf with them together. We share ideas. But I help the mortgage industry. I coach them, but my end goal is a bit different. I consider myself an entrepreneur's coach. Most coaches in the mortgage industry, they're production coaches, they're marketing coaches, they're sales coaches. There's a huge fixation on lead generation. I learned early on in my career that leads, if you're good at sales, you're good at marketing, which if you're in this industry, you should be good at, or if you're at that, if you're not good at sales, you're not good at marketing, you're probably really struggling at the beginning stages of your career. Those are not the people that I work with. I work with the people that are good at sales and marketing, and they're struggling with growing their business, surviving life balance, working too many hours, burning out. And so what I focus on is helping them embrace their entrepreneur spirit, finding the CEO inside of them, learning how to construct a better business model with building teams, operations. It's all about scaling in our industry. We're the only industry that it's hard for us to fulfill, for every 5 loans we do, everything changes in terms of structure. I can sell this pen, I can sell one pen and I can sell 1,000 pens. The only difference is I put 1,000 on the order form and I let fulfillment do it. But if I do one loan versus 20 loans, I have to do those 20 loans. And so there's a lot of structural differences. So I work with a lot of people on structure, systems. You know, my sweet spot is working with that 5, 10, sometimes 15 unit a month loan officer that's just stuck and they don't know how to grow, and helping them get to 10, 15, 15, 20. Or sometimes it's the 20 unit loan officer that's doing well, but they just work 70 hours a week. They're completely unorganized. They're working, you know, they're burnt out. They hardly see their family, and they just know that there's a better way. And so people come to me to find relief. And the way that I do it is not just giving them systems and structure, but I get them to embrace the entrepreneur attitude, that that's actually the fun part about the business, is the building part, because getting the business is actually the easier part for them. It should be the easiest part for them, because I'm not trying to create salespeople. I'm trying to create business owners. And then eventually you get to the point where you create a very successful mortgage business. And then I look at people and say, but what else are you going to do? Are you going to diversify your income and have a real estate portfolio? Are you going to have a second business? And so that's why I say I'm an entrepreneur's business coach. I just happen to be in the mortgage industry. If the mortgage industry went away, I would probably just shift into another industry and, you know, coach the same principles. This all came from me going to business school. You know, my whole passion growing up was just to be an entrepreneur, to build something. People ask me about what my goals are, and I always say to build a $10 million company. It's not about the money, it's not about the revenue, it's not about the income. It's about, if I can build something that's worth 10 million, that generates 10 million, that makes me 10 million, then I've built something really great. And I focus on that all the time. And you know, I'm right along that path. So that's you know, that's my short but lengthy answer to what I do.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. So tell me, and normally I ask people kind of what they wish they knew, you know, when they first got in this industry that they know now. But, you know, tell us something that as a coach that you teach right off the bat that, you know, that you think people should know about in the mortgage industry.
Yeah, you know, I was really fortunate because when I got into the mortgage industry, I was mentored by a high producer. And so it's like being the son of a professional athlete, how you're just exposed to things a little bit differently. So what I learned from the very beginning, I started noticing when I was coaching that people don't learn that at the very beginning. It takes them longer in their career to learn these things. By the way, you're frozen, so I don't know if you're frozen and I'm frozen. Oh, there you go. Okay. So what I learned really on was exactly what I was saying, is that to build a great mortgage career, hopefully you have some type of sales and marketing talent, and you really need to work on building your structure, your systems, specifically CRM, hiring people, leading people, training people. I think a lot of people hire people without training them, learning how to be a leader. So one of the things that I talk about is the 4 levels of progression in all careers and in business careers. So like the first level of progression is the infancy stage of your business. That's when your primary focus is just getting business. And I noticed that a lot of people, even though they're 20-year veterans, they could even be doing 15 loans a month. It's like they're still in the infancy stage. All they think about is just creating business. And I call that living in Groundhog Day, because it's the same day over and over and over. I always joke with people. I say, you've been in the business for 10 years. Does it feel like 10 years, or does it feel like 1 month 120 times? Because that's all it's like. It's like a constant cycle. And so it doesn't matter how long you've been in the industry, but if all you're thinking about is your next deal, your next pipeline, you're still in the infancy stage. If you can actually get to the next stage, which is the adolescent stage, which a lot of people get to, that's growing pains. If you think about being an adolescent, it's growing pains and dealing with capacity. And the only way to really get out of the adolescent phase is understanding structure and business models and building teams and systems and CRMs. And so most people in their careers, like I said, they're either stuck in the infancy stage because they don't know where their next deal is coming from, or they're just caught in this grind over and over and over again, and they don't know how to grow, they don't know how to get out of it, and they're usually stuck from there. If you can get out of that adolescent stage, build systems for yourself, structure, train, hire correctly, and actually not just do it, but embrace it and realize that that is your job, and that's your key to success, then you can hit the adult phase, which is seeing success in doing greater volume with better balance, doing 10, 15, 20 loans a month with balance. I have clients, a couple of them are now coaches that work for me, so they coach for me as well. Like two of my coaches that are also clients of mine, two of them, see, one of them did 46 loans last month, the other one did 62 loans last month, working a normal 8-hour workday, you know, utilizing teams and systems. And yes, it's all their production, it's all under their name, they all originated it, but they just understand how to leverage systems. And then, you know, the final stage is maturity. When you become a dominant player in your market, you're in the top, you're in the, not even 1%, like you're like in the top 0.001%, because you're probably like the number 1, 2, or 3 player in your market. So what I've learned is that what most people are obsessed with is lead generation. That only gets you to stage 1, maybe stage 2. If you want to get to stage 3, where I used to do about 20 loans a month when I originated, it's because of all the things that you need in stage 2. And so from day 1, I was taught to set up a CRM. I was taught that I needed 1 person for every 5 loans that I did. So when I was doing 20 loans, I had 4 people working for me. I had an executive assistant who was also my marketing assistant. I had an LOA, I had a processor, and I had a junior loan officer. 20, 25 loans a month, working 40 hours a week, having good balance, running a business, being profitable. I don't measure your success by your income. I measure success by your hourly rate. Because you can make a ton of income, but if you're working 80 hours a week, you actually make half of what you think you do. Does that make sense? Because you have to work twice as much just to make that.
Absolutely.
And so so what I knew from day 1 is actually what I was taught from day 1, but that's what I would tell people from day 1 is the key to your success is creating a good business model. It's not your ability to sell and market, because you're going to find out really, really quickly as soon as you excel at sales and marketing, that's not your problem anymore. But what happens is that people think that's their problem, so they just continue to just market. And what happens a lot too is that they burn through business. They don't get as many referrals and as much repeat business as they could, because they're always getting new business all the time.
Right.
We're such a service-based industry. If you're truly good at service, 50% of your past clients should have referred you business. Now, if you're listening, most people don't get 50% of their past clients to refer them somebody. Maybe 7%. Maybe 7%. If you did 100 loans last year, maybe 7 people referred you business. Maybe 10 people referred you business. You know, and but what if 50, 60 people referred you business? It would change the game. But instead of working on that model on that service level, you go out and you try to do the new Facebook ad, you try to meet that new realtor, you try to do that next lunch and learn, instead of creating a self-sustainable business that is about repeats and referrals. So it's just understanding what you're getting into. I don't coach to create producers. That's a sales job that leads to a lot of burnout. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that enjoy it. There are people that are just machines. They can just wake up every single day and do that. But it's a lesser majority than people that want to have better balance in their lives.
Absolutely. All right. Tell us as a whole in your life that something that you failed at.
I'm going to say this. Most of my failures come from taking risks. And I know that I look back at some of my failures and I say, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But then I look back and I say, but that was just the risk that I had to take. And, you know, some of the risks that I took was growing too fast, deciding to be a manager versus the loan officer, almost shooting too big, moving on to new projects too big. And although, you know, when I look at my mortgage career, I could have, even in coaching now, there were times that I second guessed some decisions, but, you know, honestly, I think that making the decision was still the right thing, because that contributed to my growth and that contributed to where I am. So what I'm saying is that if you want to be more successful, you have to fail more, because that means that you're taking enough risks to actually put yourself in a position to go forward. And for me, it's always been taking on more, or taking on too many ventures, or trying to move too quickly. So now my decisions are more based on that wisdom, and said, you know, I did that last time, I'm going to do it this time, but a little bit different.
Right.
And I will say this too. I'm not saying they don't work, but I'm not too much of a fan of partnerships. I think that, when you're working with other people, that's definitely whether that's normally failure for a lot of people or a failure for myself. But I tend to partnerships are tough. Finding the right partners that you know that have equitable relationships with you is definitely tough.
Yeah,
And
I think finding a relationship, whether it be a significant other, is hard enough, but trying to match a business personalities,
yeah,
uh, be a
yeah,
partner, and you have the same goals, the same aspirations, and
yeah.
work ethic is probably definitely tough.
Like here's one that I think of when people ask me because I was trying to think of something specific. I tend to hire I tend to hire a lot of people faster than the average person would, and why would that be a failure? Maybe I'm jumping the gun, maybe I'm spending money too quickly, maybe I'm trying to grow too quickly. But I think the reverse can be worse when you don't want to take that chance. And I think that's I think that's most of it. I mean, looking back, if I had to pinpoint most of the things that I've done, it's just moving quickly.
Moving too fast.
Mhm.
Understand. All right, man. Tell us who your number one inspiration in business or life has been up until this point.
I got a few. I mean, some personal, some mythical creatures, and and athletes and everything like that. I mean, my first mentor in business was Bill Hillstead. He was a marketing genius. He was Tim Brahim's business partner. Tim Brahim was a great $100 million producer, founder of Alone Toolbox, and Bill was the one who mentored me into the business mind. He said, Bill didn't know anything about mortgages, but he knew how to build mortgage companies because he was good at marketing. He was good at, conceptual business. And so he turned me on to reading the book, The E-Myth. He turned me on to just developing myself as an entrepreneur, as a business person. So in the business world, Bill, another person, his name was John. He was a CFO that I used to work for when I was in my 20s, and I was a brash, arrogant young manager. He taught me politics, um, and how to handle politics and people and leadership. He was a big mentor. There's a lot of just people that I look up to. Obviously, like somebody like Kobe, Kobe's gonna have his demons, but Kobe's work ethic is definitely something that I try to embrace all the time. That type of that type of commitment to success and really zeroing in on what you want and blocking things out. Um, and then I just follow a lot of people, everybody from Gary Vee to, across the board. But I would say in business, definitely, definitely Bill and John back in my early days. And today, I don't know that I can pinpoint one person, but there's a lot of really influential people in my life that I look up to, whether it's just like a friend like Mark Green, who's done extremely well, with Surefire and Top of Mind, or like a Dave Savage, who's done well with Mortgage Coach, and I've known him for a really long time too.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I think the case can be made for Kobe. No matter what people say about him, he's probably one of the top 1% hardest working people, to ever live.
I think Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, but I think that you could debate who had a harder work ethic, Kobe or Michael.
Right. Definitely.
You could debate
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. And personally, I think the edge goes to Kobe in terms of work ethic, because I think Michael was driven more by proving a point and cutting people's throats, versus Kobe was driven more by just by being a machine, right? Because Kobe actually had less talent than Michael,
Right.
but he got to the same. And so the lesson there is that with that work ethic, you don't have to have the talent of somebody, but you can outwork somebody. And I think Kobe had a lot less talent than Michael, but he was able to get very, very close to his accomplishments.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like we talked about in the beginning with Shaq, like Kobe always said that Shaq could have been literally the number one best basketball player in the history of the NBA if he would have put in the effort in his early years, in his later years that Kobe did. And
Yeah. Tiger Woods said that about John Daly. He was watching John Daly practice, and Tiger looked at John Daly, and John Daly goes, "Well, there's a number one person in the world," and he said, "Man, but if I had your talent, and if John Daly had Tiger's work ethic, so there's so much to say about it. The thing about Michael is that Michael had both, and that's why he was like that. And you see that a lot in business too, and you see that a lot in life. And I've had to look at myself and overcome certain deficiencies or, just natural disadvantages, but you find other ways. And I think especially right now during the pandemic, excuse me, I have to drink some water before I was about to cough, and that's why I always have water with me when I do this. But in the pandemic, we're exposing ourselves to there we go. We're exposing ourselves to weaknesses, but it's your ability to address those weaknesses and to adapt. And so, you look at a lot of Kobe's career, and there were certain things that he couldn't do because he didn't have Michael's physical makeup, and so he made adjustments in order to do the same thing. And I look at my career, I look at myself, I look at my physical talents, I look at my finances, and how do I accomplish something that somebody else did, but I don't have that same resource, I don't have that same talent, but how can I still get there? And that's the thing, it's never a straight path going someplace. There's always challenges, there's always landmines, and so you have to figure out different ways around things. And I think what happens with most people is that they think that there's a straight way, and then as soon as something happens, it either bothers them or they continue to fix that problem over and over and over again. I mean, I don't remember the story, but there was a story about, this guy would go down the street, and then there was a puddle, so he would every day he would put his blanket over the puddle and walk over the puddle, and and he was proud that he solved the problem. And somebody said, why don't you just go down a different street? You're just putting all that effort into it. And and that's what I think is necessary really to thrive and to survive times like this.
Tell me this: besides any Laker player, who is one of your all-time favorite non-Laker players to watch in the NBA?
I was actually just having a conversation with somebody about this. I love the stoic attitude of Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard. The thing about them is that they are unemotional, and unemotional not just on the negative side, but on the positive side. Like even when they're winning, they have like zero emotion. It's not even cutthroat. And I think that when you can take yourself to a place and you can work through business and life without that emotion, you can think better and you can methodically do things. Like one of the things they say about Kawhi Leonard is that they say, no matter how much pressure he has when he's playing a game, whether it's high pressure or low pressure, he always plays at the same speed. So what happens with a lot of people is when there's more pressure, they tend to speed up a little bit.
Right.
Because, so in business and in life, it's the same thing. How often have you been challenged in life and in business? And so you start to be almost too quick to overreact instead of keeping that same pace. And if you can adapt like a Kawhi Leonard attitude, which always methodically keeping the same pace. So I wouldn't call it like looking up to, but if you've ever watched The Matrix, with Keanu Reeves, in the movie Neo, who Keanu plays, there's a scene where he's just walking in slow motion and like everything is moving fast around them. And it's just that ability to stay at that pace no matter how crazy everything is around you. And so I really, I look at things like that because a lot of success is in your behaviors and how because the strategies are all there. The strategies have existed forever. And the strategies coming. There's enough strategies and there's enough internet and social media for you to literally lay out everything that you need to do. The next thing is your ability to actually commit and execute that plan and then make adjustments when they don't work.
I'm gonna go the opposite end of the spectrum here because my two favorite players ever to watch were Reggie Miller and Allen Iverson.
Yeah,
I think they both had more of the fight mentality. They just they were hard no matter what. They were up against it. It seemed like they were always driven by the craziness. When things were on the line, they were beating each other's bodies to a bloody pulp. This day and age, I don't know if there's many NBA players that could put up with the brutality that poor, Allen Iverson went up against. And same with Reggie.
A guy that didn't lift weights because it was too heavy.
Yeah, I mean that dude. He would go up against Shaq. I mean, he would go up. I mean, it didn't matter who was in there blocking the lane. He would just throw his body at it. And I just remember growing up, it was the playoffs, and they showed like a skeleton of a human, and they showed every injury that Allen Iverson had dealt with in that season building up to the playoffs. And then to watch him play, it was just like the guy has a mental block that he can block out, things that, some of us probably, can't do. And, obviously, yeah, he's known for his practice rant, but the kid played, and the kid played harder than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah, and they dealt with their, Reggie Miller had limited talent, but he excelled at what he could excel at really really well, and
Absolutely.
and that's an example of just capitalizing on your strengths. That's great for so for me that's great if you're like a sharpshooter, you're a salesperson, but when you're putting yourself in a situation with that CEO mentality, leadership mentality, then it does take another level of not just working hard and finding a success, but being able to lead other people and push other people too. Which,
Right.
obviously the two of them were leaders as well, but that's why I look at a lot at like a Kawhi and a Tim Duncan, and leading by example.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I look at basketball, compared to business as, like you said, there's so many ways to succeed. In business or basketball, you got people like Jordan and Kobe that just have the raw talent and they put in the work that other people aren't willing to. Then you got, guys that probably aren't big enough to play like Allen Iverson that, just block that out and he goes out there and plays. And like you said, with Reggie, he just had limited abilities, but he used what he did have to be successful. And, I think people can learn from all those different ways. And same with Kawhi, like you said, no emotion, just, same all the time. I mean, people out there that are watching this got to know that it doesn't matter who you are personality wise or what abilities you have. If you find the right coach, you find the right person to, help you, you can find success one way or another.
well, here's the difference. Just don't use it as an excuse. Michael Phelps has ADD, but he never used it as an excuse. He found a way to work through it. The problem is that when people have deficiencies, they use it as an excuse why they're not successful, and that's the problem. And I work with a lot of people that they give me their excuses, and it could be like, well, because I care so much and I want to work with people, or this is the newest one, or like, like I'm an empath, and it's just like, cool. How do we use that to your advantage and not hold you back?
Right.
Because you keep running the story that it's the reason why you're not successful instead of using a different story, which is how can I use that to be successful?
Absolutely. You can use it for either one. You can use it as a crutch or you can use it as, something to lift you up and get you moving. So
Yeah, it's that's an entirely different conversation in itself. But I can tell you all my weaknesses that I've turned around and figured out how to use them as how to use them as strengths, and it's what it is.
absolutely. So as a performance coach, tell the audience, what do you say your top three things would be to help people succeed, after this pandemic in 2020? Obviously, this is uncharted waters for everyone. How do we grow and continue to succeed, during and after this?
Well, I think the first thing is that I think that people have been in denial of technology for too long, for the most part. I don't think that people have really utilized technology to its fullest, and now we're starting to see how technology like this and Zoom is relevant, and to continue down that path. I mean, even today in 2020, you should see how many people like just are self-admitted, I'm not great at technology. Guys, it's 2020, it's not 2005. You should be good at technology.
Right.
My 14-year-old is probably better at technology than you because it doesn't scare her. And so you're going to see that changing of the guard. And if you don't want to be the guard that's going to be relieved from your post and never come back, it's because you have to embrace technology and what it can provide for you, but also understand that, maybe people didn't understand this before, but the nation turned to, for years, the U.S. has turned to a global economy where we're using, importing and exporting and manufacturing in other countries. Well, with the pandemic and with costs and with technology, business owners can now do things cross state lines, cross county lines, because now we can work with people across the country, work with people across state lines, work with people in other cities. And so, I was talking with somebody today about how, being in California, the high employment costs, what it takes just to hire people. And, what do? Do you raise your fees, but then be accused of price gouging, right? Or do you possibly hire somebody from out of state since everybody's working remotely anyways. But you have to be able to adjust and solve those problems. That's number one. Number two is, I think regardless of the pandemic, I think people underestimate their own like personal performance. That's why I call myself a performance coach. You have to really pay attention to your health, your diet, your fitness, when you sleep. I'm a huge proponent of waking up early in the morning. I think a lot of people are obsessed with time management. And the thing about time management is time management goes out the window if you don't spend that first hour. It's that first hour that you plan and you have to you download. So I wake up at 5:30 every single day. I recommend everybody wake up an hour to 2 hours earlier than they normally wake up and use that time to plan, to reflect, to set goals, to think, just quiet time for yourself. I know a lot of people wake up early because the first thing they do is go to the gym, but that doesn't count. I'm talking like your time. And if you got kids or whatever, then leave the house. I mean, just make it happen. All the best CEOs and successful people in the world, I guarantee you, they all have morning routines, right? The third thing that I would say is embrace leadership, relationships, and training. There's too much of an expectation that if I work with somebody, they'll understand. If I hire somebody, they'll know what to do. And our ability to develop people, train people, lead people is what's going to make you successful. And I'm noticing a huge deficiency in that. And, it's like you hire somebody and if they're good or they're not good, you quit on them. And you say the same thing about relationships. You say the same thing about people that you date. You say things about your kid. We're too quick to give up or blame instead of putting in the work.
Absolutely. And I see that a lot when I talk to people on my show is, when I ask about your favorite mentor, or everybody has a story about somebody that, took them, by the hand and led them into the business. And, I don't think we see enough of that, today.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of coaching out there, but I think, like you said, if you hire somebody, you've seen something in them, you need to spend the time to bring them up and show them the ropes and take them on as someone that you brought in and you plan on growing with them, not just, like you said, giving up on them and discarding them and moving on to the next one. Not everybody's going to be able to self-produce right off the bat. You gotta show them the ropes.
If you watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, he didn't start winning championships until he cared about his team members and he led them, he mentored them, he supported them. And they even asked Karl Malone, they said, what do you think about when I mentioned the name Michael Jordan? He said, I never played Michael Jordan. I played the Chicago Bulls. We got beat by the Chicago Bulls, not Michael Jordan. And it was the Chicago Bulls that won 6 championships, not Michael Jordan.
Right.
I don't remember how many seasons he was in, but I think he was at least 8 seasons deep before he won that first championship. Which is why, I know it's a debate, but when you think about how great LeBron is, LeBron was going to the championship. It was either his first or second year. Just right off the bat, Kobe was going to, finals by his third year. And people forget it took Michael a while because he didn't have the pieces in place and he wasn't a leader. And so I see that missing a lot in all industries.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I know you want to get going here, but you got any last comments you want to leave for everybody to think about?
Yeah. Again, I learned this from Dan Locke. He's like a Wall Street guy, is that the secret to wealth is not hard work, it's leverage. And so here's another lesson about Kobe Bryant. As much as he had, and as much as he worked hard, he succeeded because of leverage. So what does leverage mean? Well, in Michael Jordan's eulogy about Kobe Bryant, Michael explained that Kobe would call Jordan all the time and ask him for advice. And I just don't think that people leverage things enough. They don't leverage resources. They don't leverage people that they know. They don't leverage help. They don't leverage money. They want to do everything themselves. And you just end up spending time and energy trying to do everything yourself instead of leveraging the resources around you. The resources are there, you're just not resourceful. And the thing about starting and running a business is not about doing the work. It's not about doing the sales. It's leveraging all the resources to be profitable. and leveraging on properly.
I agree with that 100%, man, because I see there's so much out there, and it takes a lot for a Kobe to reach out to his idol and say, hey, how do you, help me with this, or what do you think about this? And like you said, a lot of people are just too much into themselves to ask for help or to pass, the torch on. Like you said, hiring somebody, you don't trust somebody to, hire them to do what you don't have time for. So yeah, absolutely, man. I love that.
Well, I had a great time talking today, Mitch, and bantering about sports. We talk about all the time, but to be here to talk about business.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, it's too bad we can't banter back and forth about the Dodgers this year, but hopefully soon. They had a good squad coming into the year.
I'm worried about the NBA first. I want them to finish their season before the Dodgers. There's a pecking order. Yeah. NBA first, then Major League Baseball, then football. Well, we'll get down the line.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you joining us, and I know you got some meetings to attend to, so I'll let you get going.
All right, thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Kai.